Sure. I'm Caroline, and these days I call myself a plural poet, which is a wanky way to say I work across different mediums. But I still consider myself like very much coming from a writing background. Um, Without the writing, probably everything else might not necessarily exist. But I've always had a bit of a side hustle in visual art. Um, I never considered myself a visual artist. I guess it was just something that I always did or always played around with. Um, but I guess these days, as I'm moving into my 50s, more and more, I think these definitions of things just sort of fade away into the background, and I just end up doing my what I want to do, really. Who else do you do it for in the end? Um, but my background is like in terms of writing, playwriting, and I in the 90s, even as a student, kind of graduating from doing a BA in theatre and writing, I very much felt at home in the community arts sector. Um, and the shows that I did even at uni were I did T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland as a half-hour production, um, and then went on to do the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, so Persian poetry, um, which probably these days would be called, appropriating someone else's culture, but back then we didn't know. So I've always kind of been interested in intersections, I think, without actually articulating it in that way. And working in community is very important to me. I still work in the community. I still work at Tootie Arts 2 days a week. I work in their theatre program as a arts facilitator, support worker. And in fact, one of the big influences in some of the pod making things that I do now is a woman called Judith Scott, whose work I discovered when I went to Mona in Tassie in 2018, and which blew my tiny little mind. I just have to say, it was like such a religious experience for me. And I saw Judith Scott's work there, and I was just like, oh my God. And she is a woman who, well, she's no longer alive, but she was a twin with Down syndrome, I think deaf, and couldn't hear, didn't speak as well. But some of the stuff that they had exhibited of her work at Mona was just amazing. And so I got really interested in her, and she sort of became a big influence on some of the stuff that I do now in terms of like using yarn and making these little pods and things like that. I've just gone off on a major tangent.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
We're all about tangents.
Yeah.
Do you want to start by talking about what you're working on now?
Okay. In the visual arts or in
anywhere? Yeah. Maybe your writing prompts.
Yeah. Okay.
Work. So anything.
Yeah. All right. So, actually, in 2020, I finally put a collection together of poetry and prose that I'd written over the last sort of decade, and then during COVID, I got a grant. I was able to record that as an audio book, and then in Fringe, I did it as a stage show, and now I'm doing a remount of that in September. So that's one thing I'm working on. So that's kind of re-rehearsing, and because I don't have a producer, so I'm sort of producing as well. But in August, it's been Poetry Month in Australia. This organisation in Sydney, Red Room Poetry, decided that Australia needs Poetry Month. Yes, they do. And so it's August. And I thought, having wanted to get a bit of a subscription base for a while and get a newsletter going, and wanting to learn how to use MailChimp, I thought, great opportunity. I'd set up a series of writing prompts during the month of August. Every day I would provide writing prompt with an image and some other links to interesting things for August. What was I thinking? So actually, it's been a lot of fun, and during that I've made a few little collages which I've then sort of had as the image, and one of them became the writing prompt as well. Yeah, it's actually been a lot of fun. I love kind of putting things together where I go, hey, have you heard about this writer? Check out this video, check out this free resource. What does this make your imagination do? So I sort of love doing that. And so that's something that I've been doing. So I've kind of set them all up for these last few days though. So I feel like that's kind of come to an end now, but it's great. I'm hoping people will hang around. I'll probably keep doing it once a fortnight, once a month or something, just to kind of let people know and keep the format of having a writing prompt, having some resources, and just letting people know what I'm doing, people that are actually interested in my work. I think I'm trying to get away from being on social media and just engaging people that are actually interested in what I'm doing, So there's a whole lot of information around that, isn't there? The best way to kind of promote yourself as an artist or a writer. And I think I might just dabble in getting away from, I guess when I say social media, I mean Facebook and Instagram, and just trying to engage with people that are actually interested in what I'm doing and where I'm playing. Yeah.
Well, you certainly gave me Kylie Minogue for
How
couple of
good.
days.
Wasn't that nice?
That was good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's and
song lines as a prompt and
I did that on Friday. I was at an event where I did a performance, and M. Koenig, who is a young Adelaide poet and musician as well, and he did this great poem, and all he used was those 9 words, and then right towards the end he just put in the poem la 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 la. I went, yeah, I just can't get you out of it. It was great, really playful, and I thought,
yeah,
and that's where I like to keep, I guess, very much responding to my environment. I was thinking about this before today, actually. I think I'm a very, and even listening to Gus talk about being in China and all the history around that arts practice. I actually think I'm the opposite. I think I'm very contemporary, and I respond very much to what's happening in the now, and I think I'm trying more and more, again, I think this is related to getting older, is to trusting that, I mean, you can learn technical skills, of course, but I think trusting that there's a whole lot of knowledge that we have about ourselves and what we need to do as practitioners, that's innate and that's intuitive, and sort of listening to that more. And I think that it's not that I disregard history or anything like that, but it's kind of like, what do we carry in our genetic makeup that is already there,
it's the idea that we are enough. Like, we don't need to get 6,000 likes on a photo, or we don't need to be in the art gallery of South Australia to be
that's right valid. And also that I'm not interested in necessarily maybe I just don't have the attention span for it, the idea of kind of delving into like Chinese culture on a particular, like, that just actually doesn't interest me. So I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, it's just kind of like when you're trying to work out what sort of artist you are, I think I'm coming to the realization that I'm quite contemporary, but I don't want to be, I want to have depth to me as well, and I know that kind of means learning things and getting better at technical things and stuff like that, but I'm doing a free poetry course online at the moment just to kind of get my skills back up, remember things that I've forgotten. But yeah,
I
I don't
think that
know.
segues nicely into maybe if you'd like to talk to us about
Okay.
this work.
Yeah, sure. So this is actually the last kind of reincarnation of a 3-step process, I reckon. So uh, maybe it would make more sense to go, Nikki, if you don't mind, to go down to the bones, number
Yep.
44. Yeah, yeah. So Judith Scott's work, she was in an institution. She was, her and her twin sister were separated. So she was institutionalized for many, many years. And, in institutions, like you've got to hide stuff because people steal shit all the time. So one of the theories about Judith's work, because she would have objects hidden inside her artworks. And I really love that idea of something being inside and hidden away. They actually x-rayed a lot of her work to see what is actually inside. And sometimes it's just coat hangers and things like things that aren't necessarily seen of value. And I thought that was really interesting too. So one of the things I tried to do, I thought, I made a whole different lot of shapes and things, and then it came down to like these smaller pod kinds of things. I was also influenced by this other um, artist called Steve Dilworth, who makes lots of different sculptures out of stone, including these beautiful handheld objects that are kind of meditative pieces that have things like seawater and um, stuff like that, calm water and different things in it. So I thought I'll try this for the poems that I do. So I've been doing a lot of slam poetry since about 2017, competition, 2-minute poems. This poem, this thing here is knuckle bones that someone gave me in this cheesecloth. I really like the idea of upcycling as well. So making art that costs next to nothing. And the ashes are, I printed out the poem. This is a poem called Stars, about a man I know with penile cancer. And I burnt the ashes, mixed it with the knuckle bones, and then wrapped it up. And so the next image, maybe 45, 46, that you see. Do you want to show the next image? So yeah, that's the gold cloth in the background. I just wrapped it up in that. And it became that. And then I just used a whole heap of wool, wrapped and stitched, and it became this. So this is, and that little tail thing that you see was I kind of felt that it had finished, and there was this big long thread, and rather than cut it off, I actually decided to leave it. And they've all ended up with these long threads, which have become quite important in a way in terms of connections, and it feels like the umbilical cord or something like that.
Mm.
So the first incarnation of these pods was in response to the poetry I was doing. I found, like, for some reason those knuckle bones really spoke to that poem. um, I tried to do everything that was free and found in terms of the materials, so either someone had given it to me or I'd found it, including all of these yarns and wools I'd just been given. So that was another layer that was quite important to me. So I did those poems, and I made a handful, maybe half a dozen of these in response to the poems, the slam poems. And then a year later, my mum, who has dementia, I put her, she lives in Western Australia, and her dementia got so bad that she had to go into care. So that was about a year later. And when someone goes into care like that, there's a whole lot of stuff. My mum's place was, while it was very clean, she had lots of knickknacks. Oh my God, so many. I didn't quite realize how many. And it's kind of like, what do you do with all that stuff? So I thought about this idea of the pods, and the first thing was like a very emotional object was like all the keys to her front door. I was just like, what do you do with someone's house keys? Um, and I just thought, well, let's try doing the pod thing. So I think maybe did we do that one further down past the knuckle bones, Nikki, maybe 40. Oh no, I didn't put the house keys in there. Okay, but let's go to 48. 48. So the first one I did was the keys, and then this one was maybe the third or fourth one that I did. So she got to a stage where like this bra was really uncomfortable. When I went to visit her one day, she was just like, "Oh, I don't want, I'm not going to wear this one anymore." I'm like, "Okay." So I just took it. And again, it's kind of like when you go into these institutions, you can't see it there, but they put a label on everything from socks to jumpers, coats, everything, including your bra. So somewhere on this bra is, the name of the home that she's in and her name. And I was just like, there's no way I'm putting that to Good Sammy's or anything like that. So again, I kind of thought, well, it's a bit bigger than house keys, but I didn't wash it. So it still has her like deodorant, her body smell, I guess, like that on it. And the doily that it's on was one of her things at home. She had so many of that kind of stuff covering surfaces. So I wrapped it up in that, and there it is wrapped up. And then I again just chose the cloth and the yarn that sort of felt like the right thing to use. And a friend had given me this beautiful from Nepal, this like recycled silk, which is what you see there. And it's just so lovely to work with. That's one of the great things about making these things is there's a real tactile sensation. There's a real tactile uh, sensation or whatever. My words aren't coming very well. There's a great satisfaction, as a writer, like working with your mind and just a little pen or something, or a typewriter or a keyboard. Um, there's something really nice about having materials in your hand. It kind of satisfies that side. This one was very emotional to make, and and you can still, like when I hold it and smell it, I can still actually smell her. So there's a whole host of things that it provides you with, and during the making as well, there's a real grieving process with dementia. Well, yeah, one woman has called it ambiguous loss, where the person is still there but they're not as you know them, so there's an ambiguity there. Not everyone agrees with that. One guy that works in the aged care industry said there's nothing ambiguous about the loss at all. So um, you know, I know what she means though, like the person is there and there is, but it's ongoing loss. And, you know, you're grieving during the process of it while the person is still alive for who they were, or your relationship with them, probably more than anything, your relationship with them changes so profoundly. And still the umbilical cord is there. There's still that cord kind of, uh, has a sense of connection or something. It just, again, intuitively felt like the right thing to do. So I did that. Okay. A year later, then COVID hit. Great. So I was, up until then, I was going to, my mum's in Western Australia. So I was getting to see her every 3 or 4 months. I was putting that in the budget to be able to go see her. And up until then, I did that anyway because I was managing all of my mum's affairs for years before she got to the stage where she couldn't do it herself. And then I still had this impulse to make these pods, but I no longer had any of her things because I wasn't going over there, so I wasn't getting, getting any more of the things. There's boxes of stuff at my brother's house. So I was just like, what? So I just started making empty pods, and that brings us to the last kind of incarnation of them, I guess. I just started, yeah, they're a bit smaller than these ones. They're much more kind of sit in the palm of your hand. And then I just started making a whole lot of them, not knowing really why or what. But this again, I really was trying not to question that. I was just going with the impulse. And then the Barossa vintage art exhibition popped up, and I decided that I can't remember the theme now.
I think it's in this bio that you
emergence,
Oh.
I think. Was it
Wasn't the reminiscing reimagined?
That's the name of the piece. But I think the theme was emergence, and I just thought, God, well, you can sort of make anything fit any theme, really, can't you? So I thought, well, these emerged out of COVID. So I was just kind of, well, they emerged out of COVID, you know. So that was my reasoning. And I thought, well, if it doesn't fit the theme, then they just won't accept it. And that they thought that it fitted, so that's cool. So so then I was like, okay, so I'll just make a few more and see. I still had no idea how I was going to present them all. At one point I sort of thought about hanging them on a tree or something like that, but that just didn't feel right, you know. And then there was this idea of absence that was just there all the time. But so I just kept making them, and then I thought, no, they need something to go into, so they need like something to nest in. And so like I went online and worked out how to finger knit and I made this huge coil. That's the white there. It's not a fixed nest, it's just coiled, so each time you arrange it, it looks very different, which is a great metaphor for whenever you catch up with someone with dementia, you're never quite sure what you're going to get. And also that they look like little brains, some of them, to me, you know. The colors are the colors that they are because my mum is very vibrant. She loves wearing colors. And she's a very vibrant kind of personality. They're not neat and tidy. Oh, some of them are. I've been careful about the stitching, but again, like I was being very intuitive about what each one sort of was asking for, I guess. But these have nothing in them, so they're empty. Yeah. And then in terms of arranging them, that was at home. I thought, oh, to have it on just a small plinth and all the umbilical cords or connectors are just dropping down, but that didn't feel right. At the gallery, they were great, and they just found like it ended up basically being on the plinth is just cardboard, and that black cloth is a friend of mine. It's like theatre curtain, which is kind of a nice wrapping up. And the idea is that the strings are kind of you know, thought waves or connections, the invisible connections that are there always, even though you can't be with someone. There's, you know, when you have a thought about someone, to me that's a connection, or a memory it's a connection, you know. And that's what all that reaching out is. It's also that kind of like, I always think of the nullarbor because that's what separates WA and SA, and I always like the idea of, you know, at night, all this kind of electrical fields of thought just crossing crossing over Australia, when people are just kind of thinking of each other and missing each other, and I just really love that as a sort of visual image. So that's the process of of those pods. And yeah, again, most of that material is either free or found. I bought maybe a little bit, particular colors that I liked, but most of it is very available. And I had I had a thought of kind of going and talking to people and trying to get this sort of thing and sort of getting the awareness of this out a bit more. But because I think, for me, it was a really great tool. But then I thought, well, maybe it's just a really great tool for me. And maybe for anybody else, it's not really their thing. It's just because my impulse is to go, oh, I've discovered something new. I want to share it with the world. I want to go and do workshops. And then I'm just like, whoa, 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 whoa. Me and a friend have a joke about me. She's like, Caroline, stop it. You're not going to do a workshop, because I always want to go and do a workshop and teach people how to do things. It's kind of like, well, maybe this is just for me.
Just for you,
yeah, maybe it's just for me, Yeah. So that's been a big part of, and it's been great doing it. I've got a lot out of it. It's been very therapeutic, but I haven't made one for a while. So ever since that exhibition, it kind of feels like that's that for now, because I've sort of moved on to making collage and stuff like that. But and my mum is now settled. She's been in care for 2 years. I see her. We chat as much as we can chat once a week on Zoom. Maybe when I'm able to go and see her again, I'll make some more. But for now, it just is what it is. It's been all about the process. It's all been process. It was never. I mean, I did happen to see that exhibition and was included in that exhibition, which was fantastic. But it was never about that. That was just a kind of happy outcome. It was timing, but it was never ever about, I'm going to make this stuff so I can get exhibited. And it was never about that at all.
How much of this process have you shared with the 2D?
None.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I don't work in visual art there either. And I work in the theatre program. And the 2D artists are really clear on their processes and what they're interested in. And I don't think they would be very interested in this.
It's true.
Because they're really, really clear on what they want to do. And also, I think I want to be a bit selfish about it, Yeah.
I just thought that might have been a nice segue to your performance work. Do you want me to play your...
Oh, sure, why not? I'll stop talking for a couple of minutes.
Yeah. See how this goes, because... I don't think you can see anything.
You might have to share the screen that pops up for that.
Get nightlights on the day you move in, or we'll give you up to $500 a day to cover your related expenses. That's our Power On guarantee. AGL.
We can only hear it though, we can't see it. Well,
yeah,
I can't.
Hang on, it's coming. Skip ad. Can you see it now?
Yeah. Yep.
I better push play.
You didn't laugh when you told me you had penile cancer. I did. I'm not proud. I think it was shock. I remember the time we pissed ourselves over words like important and impotent, unique and unique. I remember a woman laughing in a dream. She said, there's just one thing you need to know about love, but the damn dream switched before she could tell. A dream like that is like a joke without a punchline. Your cancer is like a joke without a punchline. Now, I don't know much about love, but I do know 2 hours parking at the New Adelaide Hospital will cost you $7, and that some specialists are just a weird man and have no tact. I wish your tumour was a rare mushroom blooming in a galaxy far, far away. I want to burrow into it and blast it with jokes because we know laughter is the best medicine, but we also know my jokes. So let's put Catherine Tate in the Opera House instead, and night after sold out night, I will push her into your penis and your tumour dissolve into laughter and applause, and that aura of shame you wear like a hoodie will melt away like Arctic ice. Now, I don't know if that's possible. I don't know many dead people. I don't know if a man is still a man when he doesn't have a penis, and we don't talk of such things. We are listening instead to that antiseptic urologist who seems to be saying, "Come back next Thursday, mate, and I'll cut off your dick." I rub your back when you're sick in the car park, and that's when you tell me as a kid you slept outside to feel stars inside you like friends. And when dawn broke and those stars disappeared, you wept because you thought you would never see them again. We are gliding the spiral of our Milky Way galaxy. You're alive, and you're alive, and you're alive. And we are deeper than the darkness descending, and I see now, this is it. This is love.
Cue awkward silence.
Yeah, a bit of light poetry.
That's
there.
about the 4th time I've seen it, and it just gets more and more powerful.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
Very, very clever and emotive, and I just love the pacing of the performance as well.
See, it feels a bit fast to me now, but you've only got 2 minutes, so you got to like smash it out.
Wow.
These days when I do it, I do take a bit more time.
What? Cue accenting music. Oh dear. I'll just get rid of that, I think.
But I don't do. I really well. Having said that, I'm performing in a competition online next week. But I don't do too many competition poetry performances now. It was a kind of way in, and it got me writing poetry again seriously. But yeah, I mean, COVID has affected the performance. There's been lots of online performances. But yeah, it was really great to have one last week. There was about 8 or 9 of us, very different poets. So I really love doing that. I really love it when there's a combination of different styles and different cultural backgrounds as well. And so again, yeah, it seemed a natural progression for me to go into doing a spoken word theatre piece, using the material from the book. That poem isn't in it, but I kind of worked with an outside eye, a director, and she kind of helped me to put some of the poetry and the shorter fictions together into a whole that kind of so it fits together thematically, I suppose, and there is a bit of an emphasis on my mum, family, kind of middle-aged, perimenopause, that kind of stuff, and a kind of underlying sense of threat or violence as well, which I think sort of exists in Australia. Yeah, so it seemed a natural progression because there's only so much you can do, I reckon, for like slam poetry competition stuff. 2 minutes after 2 minutes, I was just getting bored with, as I always do, with doing the same thing over and over. and I wanted to sort of bust out of that format. So my poems are getting longer now. And I've also written prose and short fictions as well. So it's a place to, the spoken word theatre piece is a place to put that in as well. So I tried it out in Fringe just to see if it would work, because I thought, oh, this could be woeful, you know, it could really not work. Could be shit, mate. But it wasn't shit. So I was invited back. When I was invited back, the Goodwood Theatre are doing a comeback series. So everyone involved, there's about 4 or 5 shows, have done the show before. So it's just an opportunity to do the show again. I'm thinking of adding 1 or 2 poems, but it will pretty much be the same show. But I'll have it recorded and photographed. Because I'd really love to take it, you know, I'd love to take it to regional South Australia. I think I think, again, I don't know, they might freaking hate it, but I think
You
it would
could
work.
certainly pitch it to
Yeah,
so.
yeah. So I think I need to, well, I know I need to get Country Arts having a look at it and see what they think, and
You
bring
seem
that.
to
Mhm.
you seem to be good at setting yourself kind of a challenge to lift your game. Would you say
Yeah.
that's a big part of your practice? Like maybe if you could give us a bit of an idea about how you combine life and living and responsibilities and maintaining a creative life with.
Yeah. That's a good question. My partner always says I do too much, like calm the fuck down, you know. I don't have children, so that makes things easier. I think I've had maybe 2 full-time jobs in my life that lasted no more than 3 years. And so the rest of the time I've worked part-time or casual. And my arts practice doesn't pay the bills, but I have so at the moment it's actually really pretty good. I work at Twitter Arts 2 days a week. My partner it doesn't work in the arts at all. Never been to the theatre before he met me. And so we're lucky that he actually has a good income, and we have nearly paid off our mortgage. So I realize I'm in very privileged position. I only have to work 2 days a week now. It wasn't always like that. I've done some shitty jobs. Oh, anyway, and now I just kind of like it. Actually, I had to go through a huge process of giving myself permission, constant talks with your partner. Are you sure? Are you okay with me only working 2 days a week? Is that cool? It means I'm only, completely invalidating all the other non-paid work that I do around the house. And also, I was my mum's primary carer. It took me a long time to realize that, because I lived in South Australia, she was in Western Australia. But I was, I was managing everything. So that took up a lot of time. And I find that working with people, which I've always done, is quite emotionally draining for me. So even the 2 days a week I do at Twitty, like, we can just be wasted at the end of that Friday. I work there Thursday, Friday, because you just like, there's a lot asked of you, but it's good, because otherwise I would just live inside my own head, which is not necessarily a constantly pretty place to be. So I think it's good for me to have that connection, but in 5 years' time, I'd actually even like not to be working there. I'd like to, because I can see I've got so many ideas, and I just I loved working with an editor and a graphic designer to put the book together. That was just brilliant. I loved working with a sound engineer to put the audio book together. We did that over maybe 3 to 6 months. He was in Sydney, I was here. It was so interesting to do that. I've loved being back in the theatre, which is all about working with people. I've got grants, arts essay grants, but I've received the amount that I've applied for. I probably had a 50% success rate, which is pretty good. But I don't constantly apply either. Yeah, and I try to, like, the days that I'm here, this is my studio, and I work here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'm at Tootie Thursday, Friday. Often Thursday, Friday, I don't put pressure on myself to do anything, because I'm just so whacked, you know. I don't know how people work full time and have an arts practice, because that's just not me. I get really, I think, really kind of anxious, and then I get exhausted from emotionally. I think I'm a bit thin-skinned in some ways, and it just really takes it out of me. And so then my practice suffers. So also, I think for me, it took lots of years of not feeling very confident as either a writer and certainly not considering myself a visual artist. So I feel like my confidence has come pretty late. And so now I think that's it. Like, instead of kind of going, oh, I don't know what's going to happen when I sit down at the desk and try writing this poem, so I won't do it. Now I just go, well, I'll just sit down, and if nothing happens, then it's okay. It's all a process. So I kind of understand process more.
What do you think helped that shift?
Just continually turning up. even if I would had sort of big gaps between. I think a lot of self-work, you know, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of actually looking at the things that I've achieved and going, why are you downplaying this? You know, why are you devaluing what you've actually achieved? You've achieved an enormous amount. And I think, you know, realizing that probably came from some of my upbringing of never being praised, never being terribly valued by my parents, because they were thinking about other things, you know. And so constantly trying to just set the bar higher and higher and higher, and it never feeling, even when I did succeed, it was just like, oh yeah, well, whatever, you know, next, and not actually giving myself credit where credit was due. So I think it's just time, Nikki, and I think it's you know, just really I spent a lot of time in supportive roles, and I still do. In some ways it's easier to lift others up, and ignore what you're doing, because you can make you feel good when you're sort of, you know, pushing other people and promoting other people. And sometimes saying no, you know. Recently I spent 5 years, I mean, it was only once a month, but I did put a lot of effort into teaching this creative writing workshop in a bookshop, and I did it for 5 years, and it got to the stage where I just was like, you know what, I just want that time for myself. And I was doing a writing workshop where I was actually traveling, so I was basically losing, you know, half of a day, and for not a lot of pay. And it took me a long time, months, to talk myself into saying it's okay not to do that job, because that person isn't that interested anyway, you know, let somebody else do it, it's okay. So, and that was only this year, you know. So it's still like that thing of, I thought I was actually quite good at carving out time for myself, but man, you know, when you really look at it, you're still like, what are you doing in your life that is not actually adding to you or your practice, you know?
Can you tell me a little bit more about your Monday, Tuesdays and Wednesdays?
Yeah. Yeah, so at the moment it's very like this year and last year I've written some new work, but not a lot, because I've realized this year and last year has been very much about putting, getting the book together. It launched in March last year, then doing a lot of pushing and promoting for that. So there was a lot of admin around that, and then I moved into doing the audio book. So and then the stage show. So a lot of the work that I do now is on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is admin, but I basically carve out time. So I'll say, I'll be at the desk because I go to the gym Mondays and Wednesdays mornings. So I am at the desk by 11. And then for me, it's easier, rather than kind of go, oh, I've got 6 hours ahead of me. What am I going to do? The night before, I will try to kind of have a list of things I want to achieve the next day. And I'm learning to have a shorter list rather than a longer list. And then I kind of go, all right, let's do this from this to this time. So let's have an hour there. I build in breaks now. So I'll sometimes set a timer, and I'll go like, you go, stand up, leave the desk for 10 minutes. And then I'll just gradually tick off the stuff that I have to do. Yeah.
And lastly, just to finish up in the last 10 minutes, you started talking about how exciting it was to collaborate with an editor and maybe could you talk about what works for you as far as collaboration? What's been some collaborative experiences that you could, if you were passing on, what makes a rich collaborative experience?
Okay, I think there has to be a sense of trust and good communication. I reckon they're maybe two of the key things. Yeah, and being honest. Like when I worked with the graphic designer, so she was designing images and collages in response to my poetry. For the most part, I really loved what she did, but there was one or two where I went, actually, not so sure about that. Is there something else? And so, there was just a constant communication. We sort of went, well, this I like this kind of style. And then she pinged back, I like this kind of style. And it was the same with the sound engineer. I said, this is the kind of idea I'm kind of thinking of. Have you heard this track? And he then would send me something back. Oh, what about this? Have you heard this? And I was going, oh, that's great. Yeah, can we do that there? So I think, communication, trust, honesty. If you really don't like something or something is not quite right, say. I think it's important to say. Sometimes I found like I went, oh no, that's not quite right. We went off on a tangent. This is particularly for the audio stuff. And he was so nice. Jeff was so nice. He was like, okay, well, let's have a look at that. And then I'd go full circle and go, actually, no, you were right. That first one was much better. Sorry. And he'd be like, no, that's cool. So I think, giving it the other person space to do what they need to do as well. Does that answer?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That allows us to open up the chat and the rooms for questions for Caroline.
Oh, thanks, Sue. Cool, no questions. I felt like I just talked heaps.
No, it's great. I learned stuff about you, even though I've been talking about you and your practice once a month for a while.
Yeah. No, it's great to articulate some of these things, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And oh, look, I'm learning so much today. It's amazing. just committing ourselves to a kind of professional development environment, like
Yeah, absolutely.
just committing ourselves to sharing authentically about the whole journey it's just been so beneficial.
But I also think, like, I mean, in terms of it's amazing how things come along when you need them. So I can't even remember now how I saw the creative exchange stuff, but it's just like with the visual arts practice, I just feel like I now need to be talking to more visual artists, and so you're not that connection. I think quite a few people have mentioned it, that connection between other artists, other people that are doing the same thing that you're doing, that you can share, you've got that language of joy and frustration of being a arts practitioner in Australia. It can be a tough old gig, but but at the same time, like, what would you do without it? There's just no way. It took me a long time to realize that I was actually profoundly unhappy when I didn't write. My partner worked it out before I did. He's like, would you go and fucking write something? Because you're unbearable to be around. So yeah,
I might just share the last there's another little piece of performance work that you sent me,
oh,
which
Oh,
is kind of
yeah.
along the same theme, isn't it?
Yeah, so I made this with a young filmmaker. Again, it was a great collaboration, and we filmed it around Port Adelaide. And she said, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "Well, what about this for an idea?" And she was like, "Yeah, let's do it." We filmed it in a couple of hours, and then she went away and edited it. Yeah,
All right.
yeah. This is nicer than the penile cancer poem.
Well, we're not just looking for nice.
No, I know. Most days, I am not a poet. Most days, I am lost in the spaces between poems. And when I go looking, I don't want to find suffering and regret, but that's the thing about poetry. It can lead you where you don't want to be led. And so, I am 12. I am quiet as an egg when they said Lindy Chamberlain murdered her own child. And it was 32 years before that woman's name was cleared. I am lost in these spaces, these places between poems. And some days, not most days, just some days, I do regret not doing more when I was younger. All those jobs I didn't strive for, compliments I never paid, books I never read or wrote, poetry readings, protest marches, family lunches. I missed them all because I was still pissed from the night before when I kissed the wrong boy and had unsafe sex. Regrets, right? I've had a few. I guess you do too. But then again, the only thing I truly regret is that I didn't listen more to the wind shifting, the earth trembling, and to my heart, my poor neglected heart. Because if I had known how to listen, I would have discovered sooner how to trust getting lost in these spaces, these places between poems, getting lost in the crook of an arm or the shadow of a rock, in a stranger's story of suffering or the whiff of bad luck, in my sister's hair as she flies over rain-drenched roofs disappearing into light, in the palace that is night, and in the astounding silence when we turn off our phones and listen.
That's really good.
8 Australians a day end their own lives in this lucky country. There are more displaced people now than after World War II. The chairman of the board of the Sydney Theatre Company is also the CEO of the Commonwealth Bank. I get lost in these spaces, these places between poems, and when I went searching for an ending, All I could find was this smart-ass poem who told me, "You will find your end in the place of grace where poetry's heard." And there you are.
Very good. Yeah, wow.
Fantastic.
That was good.
I haven't actually seen the end, so I love it. That just wraps it up beautifully. This is
nice.
Carolyn's contact information, her website, her Instagram, and her Facebook. And that gives us a couple of minutes for any questions or anything else you want to add.
I think I've talked enough.
Oh, can I just say something? I think doing a recording of your poetry would be amazing. Like actually having you read.
Yeah, I have an audiobook, so
Oh, you do? Oh,
yeah,
good.
yeah. So yeah, it was a very actually that's an interesting point because the performative way of presenting a poem is actually very different to I discovered during recording the audiobook. I discovered that my delivery became much quieter and much more intimate. So it was a very different process. And it took me a little while to work that out because I went into a studio and recorded some of those bigger poems and I recorded them at the microphone, but I was still performing them as if I was in a theater, a big space. And I realized after listening back, I needed to really bring it down. So yeah, that was something I discovered during the audiobook recording, that it was a very different process. And a lot of people really prefer it, actually, the audiobook versions of things, because it is much quieter. It's like I'm getting in your brain, man.
Yes, you have a very I know it's very real. Your voice is listening to it is very it just grabs you. I really thoroughly enjoyed listening to both of those.
Oh, thank you. Is that Sue talking? Sue
Yes.
B.
Yes. Sorry, I'm doing jobs around the house while I'm listening today. That's why my video is off.
Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Sue. That's really kind of you to say that. Yeah. But I'd love to do more. I'd love to do more of that audio recording for sure.
But not when you've got a cold.
Not when I've got a cold.
You've done great today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a privilege, such a pleasure too.
Totally ours as well. Just really special.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.